Yes? Good. So the topic is invisible influence, and as usual, I offer a few topics, and Kiki and we came up with this one for today's talk. And the idea is to, again, to talk in the realm of spiritism. So how can we understand the unseen influence, that the influence that we are constantly receiving, we're constantly engaging in, like those invisible relationships, let's call them, and how do they impact us? For that, we're first going to go to the Spirits book, and just a small parenthesis here. On the top right corner of every slide, you're going to find the source material for that slide. And I always, always encourage people to go get the book, buy the books, read the books, study for yourselves and on your own as well. And for this one, on question 457, they asked the spirits, can spirits see our most secret thoughts? And they said, they often see what you would fain hide from yourselves. Neither act nor thoughts can be hidden from them, from those discarnate spirits. They're saying that they often see what we would choose to hide even from ourselves. Or they say, they gave a bonus answer here saying, neither acts, because they asked about thoughts, but they say, neither acts nor thoughts can be hidden from them. Meaning, whenever we are, if we're talking about actions, whenever we feel like we are on our own, or we're by ourselves and we do things that we maybe are not very proud of, there's always somebody watching us, and that's very important, and that brings a lot of responsibility. Same thing with the thoughts, these mental projections or these mental images that we are constantly emitting, that we're constantly becoming in attunement, or going in the same frequency with the vibration of those around us. And the question 459, I think, is one of my favorite questions from this book. They asked, do spirits influence our thoughts and our actions? Because if they can see our thoughts and our actions, even when we don't think nobody is watching, can they influence them? Well, they say that their influence upon them is greater than you suppose, for it is very often they who direct both. So let's pause for a moment and realize what this means. They're saying that they can see our thoughts and our actions, but they can also influence our thoughts and our actions. Before, I guess, and when I say before, at least for a long time prior to Spiritism came and opened our eyes to different types of knowledge or explain it in different ways, we would think that our mental, no, we had a mental fortress where everything that we thought, if I didn't say anything, if I didn't act upon that thought, that was just for myself, and that nothing would come from that. But now we're learning that there's a lot that can come from just having the thought, and the spirits can definitely influence our thoughts and also our action. Question 460, then, the question right after that one. Have we some thoughts that originate with ourselves and others that are suggested to us? And they say, your soul is a spirit who thinks. This ability, this sentience, this ability to think comes with our degree of evolution, because being immortal souls, immortal spirits, we have gone through different degrees of evolution, and right now we have this instrument that is very powerful under our responsibility. We're liable for this instrument called our thought. And they said, you must have observed that many thoughts, and frequently very opposite ones, come into your mind in reference to the same subject and at the same time. In such cases, some of them are your own and some are ours. This is the cause of your uncertainties, because you have thus in your mind two ideas that oppose each other. So they're saying, okay, so do we also have thoughts, or is everything a suggestion from the spirits? They're saying your soul's a spirit who thinks. There are both. But have you ever observed that sometimes in the same subject, or in the same moment in time, or in the same in the same action or situation, I guess, we can have different thoughts and very opposing ones, for good or for bad. Sometimes we're in a situation where all of a sudden it's like we're having this negative thought, or this thought that is not rooted in goodness. That is usually not something we would think, or we would like to think, at least. Or oftentimes as well, we may be having in the spur of the moment, we may have a thought, like almost an impetus to do something that we know it's not right, or we know we're going to regret. And all of a sudden there comes another thought there that's very opposite to that one, a thought of rooted in goodness. This is something that they're talking about here. So we are already seeing by the answer to these questions that there is a great invisible influence upon not only our thoughts, but also our actions. And then this is a book by Emmanuel called Divine Justice. And in this one, Emmanuel is going to say, if one day you are hungry for greater hope, do not be afraid to ask for inspiration and assistance from the beloved hearts that preceded you on the great journey. They will be with you, supporting your energies in human tasks like stars in the night sky of longing, so that you know how to wait patiently for the lights of dawn. Seek them the light of love on the wings of prayer. Message number 35, and Emmanuel is going to say that whenever we are hungry for greater hope, whenever we are searching for some inspiration, whenever we need help from our invisible benefactors, for us not to be shy to ask them for that help, for us not to postpone asking for their help. And he's already giving us a way to do that. Seek them the light of love, or seek their love, their assistance through or on the wings of prayer. So by praying, by elevating our thoughts to Jesus, to God, to our Creator, to our benefactors, to our guardian angels, to our friends, spiritual friends, by elevating that thought with sentiment, we are essentially praying. And that's a way for us to receive that inspiration, which is a type of influence and type of invisible influence, by doing that from our friends. Now, the book Thought and Life, talking about a little bit about watch and pray, which are two things that Jesus told us to do. In the prayer aspect, we have that prayer gives a spark to the hidden energies of the heart and releases them by the living and image-forming power of thought. And in turn, these images ascend to the higher spheres, touching the minds of both visible and invisible entities around us. As a result of this contact, we will receive answers from the divine plane. Look how beautiful this passage is. And in the Gospel according to Spiritism, we learn that it is not for the multiplicity of words that we will be heard, but by the sincerity of those words. So it's not necessarily trying to use difficult words or speaking a higher level of English or Portuguese or Spanish or whatever it is that you speak. That's gonna matter. What matters is, and will always matter, is the sentiment behind those words. And I'm talking words because oftentimes we're gonna pray, as we do here, or we did as well in the beginning, by speaking out loud. But oftentimes we're gonna pray just us and our Creator. So we're not gonna be speaking words through our mouths, but those words are going to come and they're going to form these images through our thoughts. And it's beautiful to think that these images ascend to the higher spheres. So that the thought is a very powerful thing that can create, destroy, modulate. And I recommend the book Genesis by Allan Kardec, and the whole series by André Luiz. If somebody wants to learn a little bit more about, I guess, the power of thoughts and how thoughts actually work, and the cosmic fluid and all of that. But the idea here for us to focus on this one is that these prayers, they reach the higher plane, the higher planes, the higher spheres. Whenever they are done with the language of the heart. And there is no prayer that goes to waste ever if they're made with our hearts, truly with sentiment. And a very good example that I like to mention is the one on the book Between Heaven and Earth, by psychographed by Chico and by the author, spiritual author André Luis. In the beginning of that book, there is this moment with the characters there that there is some turmoil in the family, and this girl, she has a stepmother, and the stepmother is not doing so well. And this girl, she prays for her mom, her biological mother, who had already died in that moment in the book, in the story. She's praying for her mother to come, biological mother, come and help the family and help the stepmother who's not doing so well. Little does she know, did she know, that the biological mother was obsessing, or was a spiritual obsessor of the stepmother. The biological mother was in a very low frequency, feeding thoughts of jealousy and hate and all of that. So what happened was that prayer that had a certain frequency to the biological mother did not land, quote unquote, land in the brain of the biological mother, because her frequency was much lower. What happened? That prayer did not go to waste. That prayer to the biological mother ascended, then it's called a refracted prayer, ascended to the benefactors in the spiritual world, and they sent help to that family. I think that, again, reinforces this idea that whenever we're praying from the heart, it's not going to go to waste ever. I think that's something that we must have in mind. And in one of my favorite books, Leon Denis, in The Problem of Life and Destiny, he's going to say this, and I wanted to put this quotation in full. He says, "But I never missed the help of my invisible friends. Never did my voice speak to them in vain. Since my first steps in this world, their influence has enveloped me. It is to their inspirations that I owe my best pages and my most vibrant traits." So he's basically paying some tribute here to those invisible friends that helped him through inspiration. But because he was able to put his mental field in a place where he could listen to those friends. And he says, "They shared my joys and sorrows, and when the storm rumbled, I knew they were standing near me during the struggle. Without them, without their help, I would have had to interrupt my march and suspend my labor a long time ago. Sometimes during the retreat of the evening or the silence of the night, their voices speak to me, cradle me, comfort me." Leon Denis is talking about this invisible influence of the good spirits, this help that he has gotten so many times, as he's saying, even saying that without them, without that help, he probably would have stopped his march when he was alive, and he was writing this when he was alive. And he's also saying that during the retreat of the evening or the silence of the night, their voices speak to me. Which is interesting for us to realize that he's talking about a type of in a way, a meditation, a type of prayer as well. When he's putting himself in the silence of the night or the retreat of the evening, in a condition where he's not being completely distracted by something else, and he can really tune into the thoughts of the higher spirits. And that's something for us to think about and reflect. And each person, I guess, can reflect on how much we're actually doing that. How much time are we actually dedicating to this inner journey, through this introspection, which is also when we're praying and elevating our thoughts, we're going to receive the help from those benefactors. And he goes on as well to say that genius owes a great deal to inspiration, which is a form of mediumship. In cases where this faculty was clearly detected, the individual of genius could not be considered as a mere instrument. Genius is above all an achievement of the past, the result of patient studies throughout centuries of a slow and painful initiation. These attendants develop in one's being a deep sensibility which opens itself to higher influences. And in certain individuals, these two causes, the personal conquest and external inspirations, combine with and complement one another. And we don't have to go very far. We don't even have to go stay in the realm of spiritism to understand that he's talking about co-creation in these the self-creation versus self-creation. He's talking about how we oftentimes have, or we in some cases have prepared ourselves through different passages in the material plane, through different lives, through different reincarnations, to get a certain quality, to sharpen a certain instrument that we must use. And he's talking about mediumship here, and how these two causes, meaning the personal conquests, the things I have already acquired or already worked within me, are now receiving the external inspiration of the good spirits, and those two are combining for something great. And I said we don't need to go or stay in the realm of spiritism. All we need to do is go to a museum and look at art, and look at I don't know, sculptures, paintings, or art like feats of engineering. All of those things, there's always this mix of these personal conquests, these missions that these spirits have, as well as external inspiration. So many musical artists that I appreciate, even those, most of them actually with no like spiritual background, they're saying, yeah, I was inspired, and I don't know, it didn't feel like I was writing it. I felt like someone else was writing that song. And in the book Divine Justice here, I really wanted to bring this part because I love that Emmanuel gives us this. He says, the friends who preceded you in the spiritual homeland accompany you in the triumphs ignored by men, and bless you with the sweat of patience in the necessary struggles. They encourage you in the cause of pure love and sustain your energy so that your hope does not fade. They share your joys and pains, teaching you to sow happiness in others so that you reap greater happiness. If you stumble, they stretch out their arms to you, and if you cry, they dry your tears. Above all, they wait for you, confident, when you finish the task, to hug you affectionately with the joy of someone welcoming a dear companion back home. If we take anything from today's talk about the invisible influence or unseen help that we have, let's take this slide with us. Let's take this message with us. I purposely bolded all the action words there for us to realize how much help we receive from the invisible friends. Look at how many things, how many different things they do. Accompany us, they bless us, encourage us, sustain our energy, teach us, stretch their arms to us, dry our tears, and in the end they wait for us to hug us affectionately when we come back home as winners. In the book Planetary Transition by Divaldo Franco, he's the author, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, he says, it is still a great challenge to do good in today's tumultuous world. However, those who dedicate themselves to the practice of charity and the exercise of doing good should not be discouraged. Because if there are executioners from beyond, always willing to carry out heinous crimes, guardian angels also swarm vigilant and quick in the execution of legitimate fraternity. It is still a great challenge to do good, because oftentimes when we're trying to do good to ourselves or to others, we're going to encounter barriers, we're going to encounter prejudice, we're going to encounter judgments. But he's saying those who want to perceive or perseverate in the way, perseverate in the way of good, they will always have the help of these guardian angels that are there, these spirits that are there, watching us, rooting for us, waiting for an opportunity so we can receive their help when we're doing good. So we're never, ever alone in the path of good. Intuition, again with the Leon Denis, is in most cases only one of the forms used by the inhabitants of the unseen to transmit their warnings and instructions to us. Other times, it will be the revelation of deep consciousness, normal consciousness. In the first case, it can be considered as an inspiration. Through mediumship, the spirit infuses his ideas into the understanding of the medium. So is this basically this, in a way, this mental conversation, a very oversimplifying it. And he's saying that it can be considered oftentimes an inspiration as well, and this through mediumship. And Leon Denis, in his book, he's also the same book, he's going to make an analogy that I like, and he says, the broad stretch of a river cannot flow, and that's why I put that image there with the arrow. The broad stretch of a river cannot flow through a narrow riverbed. So if you have the broad stretch of the river trying to flow through a narrow riverbed, it's not going to be able to flow with the same volume of water in the same pace. And he's saying, he's making that analogy to say that an inspiring spirit is going to succeed in transmitting the thought only for those who have, or for those who put themselves in an adequate position to receive that inspiration, to receive that communication. Because he says, above all, we, the incarnate ones listening to what I'm talking right now, we are also spirits. So communicating with them is basically the difference is between flesh and not having the flesh at their disposal. But we are also spirits. And again, this idea that oftentimes when we are when leaving our minds, when we are leaving our minds in a tumultuous state, it's like we're narrowing a riverbed to receive that inspiration. In the book Action and Reaction, Druso, who is the instructor of André Luiz in that book, the author, André Luiz is the author, is talking about how we can think of our mind as a lake. If the waters of the lake are placid, if they are calm and clean and serene, the reflections from the sky can reflect on the lake, on those waters. But if the waters are in constant turmoil, the reflection is not going to be there, especially when he says the muck or the mud or the dirt from the bottom comes to the surface. And that dirt, that muck, that mud that can come from the bottom when we're thinking of tumultuous waters is a lot of conflicts that we bring, a lot of these problems that we still are trying to improve. But we must think of our minds as the lake so we can reflect the sky. And this idea, the subjective piece of this, is that the sky is inspirations from the above, inspiration from the good spirits. Emmanuel is going to tell us that if you feel alone in your faith, remember Jesus. One day, he was abandoned and crucified on top of a hill, contemplating deserting friends and gratuitous executioners, ungrateful beneficiaries and unconscious adversaries. In human conceptualization, he was completely alone. However, he with God and God with him formed a majority before the wild crowd. We are never alone. And if we ever feel that we're wavering in our faith, in our path, because of the challenges and the barriers, and we're struggling to get the help or receive, accept the help from the unseen world, let's remember what Jesus went through and use that as an inspiration for our journey here. And in the book, The Consoler, which was recently translated to English, yes, this one is a question number 383. Is it accurate to consider all human beings as mediums? All people, regardless of their evolutionary level, demonstrate some degree of mediumship. This attribute of the spirit represents the dawning of new perceptions for the beings of the future, when they will notice the expansion of the narrow window of their five senses as a result of the advancement of the world's views. A lot for us to unpack there. But the main thing that Emmanuel is trying to say here is the expansion of these faculties and the mediumship as this attribute. Because if we only focus on our five senses, which are from we're not going to be able to see or feel everything or hear everything, because our five senses are still very rudimentary. They're still very precarious from an evolutionary standpoint of everything that we're going to be able to accomplish, of the plenitude that is waiting for us and every attribute that we're going to have. If we judge everything based on our five senses, we're going to be missing out on a lot, and we're going to be falling into the trap of arrogance to think that they are the pinnacle of the evolution of the soul when they are very much not the pinnacle. What is the greatest need for mediums then? They're going to ask. The first need for mediums is to educate themselves in the gospel before committing to major spiritist tasks, or they risk bumping into the specter of individualism at the expense of their mission. So studying a lot. So educating ourselves, really diving into these books and really understanding as much as we can, and talking and participating in groups and doing all these things so we don't risk, he says, bumping into the specter of individualism in our mission. Because if we don't do that, we may fall again prey to our to arrogance. We may fall prey to temptation. We may fall prey to lesser spirits trying to tease us by inflating our pride, our ego, and all those things. But can mediums then disregard their studies and count only on their spiritual guides for all their needs? Because we've been saying here that there's so much help that's available to us. Can we just not study and just let them help us? As dedicated as and evolved as they may be, these spirits, discarded mentors can neither restrain the will nor eliminate essential struggles from mediums' lives, because it is through these difficulties that human beings redeem their criminal, obscure past and acquire new merits. And I underline this one, this great passage here. If a medium expects a great deal from their mentors, it is only fair that their mentors expect a great deal of effort from the medium in return. We're expecting a great deal of help. We better be prepared to put a lot of effort as well in this work, because they can help us, but they cannot just do the work for us. Because a lot of the work that we're trying to do, especially again, we're talking about mediumistic abilities here or work, especially because a lot of those types of works are things that we, before coming back to the material plane, we chose to do and we must do. The practice of expecting everything from a mentor can turn into a detestable habit and compromise the most precious potential of soul. So if we fall prey to expecting everything from a spiritual mentor, that can develop into, he says here, a detestable habit and compromise our own progress. The same way, if we go to the caterpillar and we try to help them break free to fly as a butterfly, they're gonna die as a butterfly. They need to go through that pain and the struggle so their wings become strong and they can burst and fly away. And this is from The Way, the Truth, and the Life. Is from Emmanuel as well. He's saying help from the invisible realm is incontestable and unfailing in its multiform expressions when the time is right. Message number 100. But it is essential that believers not get accustomed to this type of collaboration, that they learn to walk by themselves, convinced that they are in the world in order to learn, and that they are not allowed to ask their instructions to solve the problems that are necessary in their positions as students. The same way that when we went to school and we had a test, we didn't raise our hands in the middle of the test and ask the teacher, what are the answers here? Just give me the answers. I mean, we might have tried to do that, but we definitely didn't get those answers, because it is not their responsibility, or it is not the purpose of the test. It's for us to understand and to be able to answer those things ourselves. We can we can ask for help in our walk, but we cannot ask them to help walk for us. walk in our place. Our spiritual evolution, or the pace that we do, or the way we go about it, is very much individual, meaning it pertains to me. Mine is unique. Each one of you guys' evolution is unique and is non-transferable. Can't transfer that responsibility or the liability of that individual walk. And when we're talking about invisible influence, we're talking a lot about the help, but we also must talk about the lesser spirits and sometimes these obsessive processes. So how can we neutralize then the influence of evil spirits? Because we already established that they can very much see our thoughts, they can influence our thoughts and actions. So it is safe to assume that we can also be influenced in a negative way. How can we neutralize that? And they're saying by only doing what is right and putting all your trust in God, you repel the influence of inferior spirits and prevent them from obtaining power over you. Take care not to listen to the suggestions of spirits who inspire you with evil thoughts, stir up discord among you, and excite you in evil passions. Distrust especially those who flatter your pride, for in doing so they attack you on your weakest side. This is why Jesus makes you say in the Lord's Prayer, let us not succumb to temptation, but deliver us from evil. And I bolded the word pride there because they're saying distrust, especially those who flatter your pride. Because they know that pride and selfishness are the two urges of our current society, of our current time. They know that pride and selfishness, which are still very much alive in us, oftentimes direct our actions, direct our thoughts, and they go for that. Those who dedicate themselves to the task of curing obsessions need to consider, first of all, the need for inner illumination of the disturbed medium, because the cure itself lies in their spiritual education. The obsessed person who gives his body without moral resistance to ignorant and disturbed entities is like the artist who gives his precious violin to a malefactor. So for us to understand again the responsibility and the need for us to watch and pray, as Jesus has told us, watch and pray so that you do not fall into temptation, as we can find in the Bible. So by watching and praying, basically what we're doing is we're shielding ourselves from this influence here. And this is why as well I wanted to mention that I purposely chose the word influence, invisible influence in the theme, and not just invisible aid or help, because we must talk about the influence that we receive, that we allow ourselves to receive, I may add, very importantly, from the lesser spirits, from those who are still dwelling in the mistakes and the errors and are there not to help us. But now shifting back a little bit to some of the questions that have come in these types of talk, and I wanted to add them here. What is to be understood by the expression guardian angel? And they're going to say that it is a spirit protector of high degree. What is the mission then of a spirit protector? Is the follow-up question. That of a father towards his children, to lead the object of his protection into the right road, aid him with his counsels, to console him in his afflictions, and to sustain his courage under the trials of his earthly life. So, because the guardian angel is, again, is a question that often appears, do we have a guardian angel? If so, what's the role? So in the Spirit's book, they asked this, they already asked these questions, so I wanted to bring them here. And does the spirit protector feel sorrow on seeing a ward taking the wrong road? Does not such sight disturb his own happiness, his own tranquility? He is grieved at his errors, of the ward's errors, and pities him. But this affliction has none of the anguish of terrestrial paternity, because he knows that there is a remedy for the evil, and that what is not done today will be done tomorrow. So it is a very interesting response here, because they're saying, yes, he grieves and pities them, but it's not in the same way or with the same anguish that you are accustomed to in terrestrial paternity. Because for those of us who are fathers and mothers, biological or not, we know that when our child is suffering, sometimes it feels like we suffer more than them. It hurts more on us than on them. And there's an anguish behind it. There's all of that when we're seeing them making these mistakes, but they're saying it's not in exactly how you're picturing it, because these higher spirits who have already been through these trials and expiations and atonements and tribulations that we're going through, they know that there is a remedy for that evil doing, that road that is wrong, and they know that what is not done now will be done tomorrow, because we are all marching towards plenitude. We're all marching towards the highest level of that our spirits can achieve. And they know if the world is not doing what he or she's supposed to be doing now, they're gonna have to do tomorrow. Maybe in another reincarnation, maybe in the spiritual plane, but we cannot flee from our duties and responsibilities as spirits. And again, I know I gave a talk about Paul and Stephen, or the book, Saul's Inseparable Companions. And in that book, we can also, again, understand how Saul, when he needed the most, and he saw the two spirits of Stephen and Abigail when he was, sleeping or dreaming, he saw those two spirits and he had a very nice conversation with them. And from that conversation, Saul was able to renew himself in that moment, get the strength and the courage and the energy that he needed to get in order to go forward with the mission. And we know the mission that he accomplished in the book Paul Stephen, one of my favorite books ever. We accompany the trajectory of the apostle of the Gentiles and how much Paul accomplished after this conversation, how much he did and still does from the spiritual plane after that conversation, from that unseen assistance, meaning from the assistance of those who have preceded him in the realm of the spirit. And in the book Love and Hate by Ivone, we have this passage here that says, and I thought this was also beautiful. The mentor says, a human creature will never be so miserable and devoid of the sympathies of the invisible plane that it will no longer have a handful of disinterested and loyal friends, ready to help it on a fair occasion. Many of these will be affections conquered in the course of previous lives. Others, missionaries to whom it was entrusted for the work of progress by the supreme power of the universe. No matter how much we are appalled by what someone is or what someone is doing here on earth, they're saying nobody is so miserable not to have a handful, not just one, a handful of disinterested and loyal friends. And we regardless of whether these friends are just missionaries or they're people that love that spirit from past lives and all of that, but nobody is without the help of these people. Often in the daily sequence of the journey that progress imposes on earth as in space, these luminous guides warn or advise their pupils, pointing out paths to follow. But we must remember the riverbed that we talked about in that image. We must remember the comparison with the lake. We need to prepare our mental field so we can receive this help in a proper way, in the way that they want to help us. And this message is from St. Augustine. It's on the Spirit's book. He says, do not fear to weary us with your questions. He's telling us that. Remain, on the contrary, always in connection with us, higher spirits. You will thus be stronger and happier. So as much as we may sometimes think, I don't want to just ask for this, for the spirits, or think, don't worry wearing us with your questions. And then he's going to say something that is very key. He says, to those who may think it's impossible that spirits of high degree should bind themselves to a task so laborious and demanding, so much patience on their part, we reply that we influence your souls while at many million leagues from you. To us, space is nothing. And while living in another world, our spirits preserve their connection with yours. We possess qualities of which you can form no idea. But be sure that God has not imposed upon us a task above our strength, that He has not abandoned you upon the earth without friends and without support. To us, space is nothing. We have no idea of the power of these higher spirits. So whenever we think that we're trying, I don't want to bother Jesus with this, or I don't know if Jesus is gonna hear me, or if the higher spirits, or Bezerra, or Paul, whoever we pray to, okay, their qualities that they possess, even if they are in a different world, they can still help us because we really don't know all of that. We don't know all of their power. But the main thing he's saying here is don't be afraid to ask us questions. Don't be afraid to ask us for help, because this invisible influence upon us is very much real, is very much at hand. All we need to do is just attune ourselves to the higher spirits, watch our thought, become vigilant with our thought, pray from our hearts, because God has not left us here without friends and without support. And to finish, a message from the doctor. Do not disbelieve in divine support through the friends of the Most High, who do not leave you alone with your trials. If it were not for the intercession of those who are interested in you from beyond, it is possible that you would fall into deeper abysses of pain. So let us understand the invisible influence of those friends. Let us understand the invisible influence that we allow ourselves to receive, and watch and pray. And I wish everybody a very blessed week.
Thank you so much, Yuri. As always, and once again, very clear, concise, well-organized presentation. I can't help but feel as I walk away from this presentation that the importance of mediumship education. And even I'm thinking, even if we don't want to use our mediumship faculties or for whatever reason, but I think it's so important that we understand it. Number one, just like you in that great diagram of the water trying to get into the canal or whatever, we make ourselves more receptive to receiving the messages or the connection with the invisible. And then also, I think it helps to keep down the superstition, because when we don't understand something, that's when we start with our storytelling, and then it goes from one person and it gets more exaggerated each time. And then we end up in a lot of, in a very fearful place. It's encouraging and very hopeful, how you mentioned over and over and over again, we're never alone and we always get assistance. And then two, to remember that we have a part, or we need to apply effort. So it's not about, someone taking over our duties or our work or our mission or our task, but that we are assisted. And, it's just the divine justice of God, right? That we receive assistance. Tanya mentioned in the chat that we cannot forget that even the apostle of Jesus was influenced by the negative spirits too. So we'll open up the discussion and any questions people may have. Thank you again for coming. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Great talk. I'm blessed to say I watched you yesterday morning as well. So it's very cool to get you 2 days in a row like this, and profound impact. I will tell you, there seems to be a theme occurring in the US right now. In the English speaking presentations I've seen for a few weeks, it's this shift to proactive activity, proactive independence. not so much a reliance on protective spirits, guiding spirits, mentor spirits. It's up to us. There seems to be just a whole variety of messages for us to further our knowledge, further our confidence in ourselves, further our confidence of where we are at this point in time as spiritists, and take our own, take our own path seriously, and not just sit back and be lazy. And I'm perfectly guilty of this, but I will tell you, I read something psychologically as well that you may be professionally in tune to, and that's this country. We've become followers. We've become acceptors of what is. We've become affected by the habits of the decisions of others. And we no longer have necessarily that same independent spirit that spiritism is now seemingly calling us to. Anyway, I just sense that in your talk yesterday and again today. Thank you again.
Yuri, thank you for the presentation. I was not there yesterday, but I'm here today, and I can sense what Mark is referring to. It is interesting what Mark just mentioned, that it's not about what we know from outside, it's about know from within. Know thyself, invest on yourself, and understanding the whole thing so we can become better in synchrony with the higher spirits. One analogy that comes to me about the influence of the invisible is like when you go to the supermarket right now and you just bring your credit card or your EBT card, and in proximity, it reads it. That's the same situation. So they read us by proximity. They sense us. They don't read us as we use the speech or language to communicate. They have a different process of understand what's going on. So that's why nothing can be hidden from them. Nothing can be hidden from them. And I think that's what helps us is by equipping ourselves with this kind of understanding, knowledge, and studying and reading. It doesn't matter where, if you are from the US or from Uganda or from anywhere in the planet. The point is that it's personal investment. So thank you for the presentation. It's very good. Thank you.
Hi, Yuri. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed your talk. And I tried to just feel it primarily, and it really touched my heart. To me, that's success. Thank you. Particularly this consoling aspect, the support we're getting, and for us to also step up to the plate and not just receive, not just to use the spirit world on high as our broom, so to speak, but to actually do the work. And I just want to say one more thing. I just recently listened to a presentation, non-spiritist presentation on the hidden gospels, the ones that are not very prevalent, like one is that of Thomas. And in there, it's so clear. You started off your talk by, how important our thought is and thought in life and stuff, to really manifest and go and get in tune with the spirit world is our feeling world. It's like feeling our prayers, feeling our thoughts, because that's where our manifestation lies, good or bad, right? But it brings us awareness, and to not forget that aspect. This is something that has really opened up for me lately, to go and feel things more, not so much just think them. So beautiful prayer is wonderful, but as long as our hearts are not 100% engaged, we're wondering, is there a God, right? Because they never get answered. Anyway, thank you so much. I loved your talk, Yuri. And I hope we see you soon again. Thanks.
Yuri, wanted to thank you once more. It's always a gift to hear from you. And it's funny because I always leave those talks speechless. So much to reflect. It's so much to reflect. And it's funny because when we are doing the announcements, one of the things that we always say is that our mentors are working with us along the speech for us to write down our thoughts and the things that we have to reflect. And I couldn't keep up with all the things that I needed to write down because there is so much. But one thing that I'm reflecting a lot is sometimes we carry some ideas that we do not know if they come from our thoughts, if they come from our heart, but they are there forever. And it's sometimes we just have to stop and pay attention and really look for this boost of hope and support, so then we can understand if that is us being stubborn into one specific topic, or if that's God talking to us about something that we have to do. Yeah, that's very interesting. A lot to reflect. Thank you so much. I do think that one of the things that I always like to exercise with the speakers is when someone is not being able to do that. If someone is struggling and it's not being able to manage what is the influence coming, what should we do? But I think that you explored that. If you want to say anything additionally, I just like to reinforce that message for all of those who are hearing and who are struggling with doing something. You're on mute. Well, it doesn't show like you're on mute, but we can't hear you.
Testing.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I said in 3 words, watch and pray, or like 2 words, watch, pray. If I can summarize everything, or how to ward off the influence of the evil spirits, but also open ourselves up to the influence of the good ones, watch and pray. Matthew chapter 26. I think that's that's basically the best thing we can do, because again, everything is vibration, frequency, attunement. So just by doing that, and by having this notion of watching, being vigilant to my thoughts, and then praying, so those 2 things are the foundations for those who are struggling, and I think for all of us.
Yeah, you hit right on the nail, because that's what I was going to say, that we live in a world of vibrations. The universe is vibrations. You're right. Thank you.
If I can
would add
complement that.
one more.
Oh, go ahead.
I would just add one more thing in the effort to watch and pray.
Oh yeah.
Exercise patience. You've got to exercise patience. You're not going to solve it with one prayer.
True.
It's in the time of God, right? Like we sometimes we think that things should go according to our own agenda, our own time, or the time that we think is the right one, when in fact we know very little. So we must trust and have faith as well. Put all our hearts and all our efforts into being vigilant and praying, but also, like you said, having the resignation and the understanding that it's not going to be I prayed and it's answered because I just asked for it, if it's not meant to be.
And here's a very interesting red alert for us, or a red flag, is that if we are vibrations and every prayer is always answered, no matter what you pray for, there is always an answer, because it's cause and reaction. So if you vibrate positive, like we think of prayers, okay, everybody prays for good.
That's already it.
If everybody's vibrating for something negative, that is also somehow a prayer.
Exactly, and that's the feeling aspect that I, mentioned earlier. There is something else that I picked up in this lecture, and that is the minute we pray for something, we already destroyed the prayer, because then we're actually not feeling, it's out in the future. It's not because the ingredient is that we're feeling it right here, right now. We're already embodying whatever we're praying for. So this is a really novel concept, and I'm kind of playing with that because it's so novel. But to really watch myself, how much I'm praying for things, and right at that moment, I'm actually not feeling it. I just mentalize it into the future, and I took away from the power of my prayer.
There you go.
Thank you.
So Tanya's added in the chat, be aware of every thought, word, and emotion that comes from your mind and heart. Pray and watch and pray. Thanks, Tanya. Are there any more comments or questions to Yuri? Okay, then. Thank you once again, Yuri. And now we will take a short break and move on to the second part of our service, which is the virtual healing passes.
Seems like Mosen was going to say something. Right,
Oh,
Mosen?
I'm sorry. Mohsin, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. I wanted only to thank Yuri for this nice presentation. I enjoyed that for the second time to see him, and what I have learned today, even my English is not good, is that what we not know, what we don't understand, we should disbelieve that, because we cannot say that is wrong or that is not possible. We should know, pray to understand that. At any rate, I wanted only to thank you, Julie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mohsin. Sorry about that. Okay, so we will move on to the second part after we'll take a 4-minute break. Okay, so join us, and thanks again, Yuri.